If he'll lie to his own children, he'll lie to anyone. The words hit Mallory Brooks before she even realized they weren't meant for her. She had only stopped outside the bakery to pick up the chocolate cake Grant claimed he never had time to buy for their anniversary dinner. Through the front window, she saw a little girl, maybe 7 years old, pouting with frosting on her nose while a woman laughed beside her. Then the man turned around. Grant, her husband, the man who had texted an hour earlier saying, "Running late. Client meeting. Don't wait up." The little girl wrapped both arms around his waist. "Daddy, you promised I'd get the biggest slice," she laughed. Grant bent down and kissed the top of her head with a smile Mallory hadn't seen in months. "You can have 2 slices today, Peanut." Time didn't stop. It simply refused to move. Mallory stood frozen on the sidewalk, her fingers tightening around her car keys until the edges dug into her palm. Maybe she was mistaken. Maybe the child had called every adult man daddy. Maybe this was some charity event. Maybe there was an explanation that didn't destroy 15 years of marriage in a single breath. Then the woman reached over and brushed frosting off Grant's cheek with the ease of someone who had done it 100 times before. He didn't flinch. He smiled at her. Comfortable. Familiar. At home. Mallory quietly stepped back before anyone inside noticed her. She placed the untouched anniversary cake back on the passenger seat of her SUV and drove away without starting the music like she always did. The silence felt louder than traffic. When she reached home, the house looked exactly the way she had left it that morning. Fresh flowers on the kitchen island. Candles waiting to be lit. 2 wine glasses beside the unopened bottle Grant had bought for their anniversary. She stared at the framed wedding photo above the fireplace. Grant's arm around her shoulders. Both of them laughing. She remembered believing that picture captured forever. At 8:17 p.m., her phone buzzed. Still in the meeting. "Love you. Rain check on dinner?" Mallory read the message twice. Then a third time. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she opened social media. Grant rarely posted anything personal, but someone else had. A woman named Rebecca Sloan had uploaded 6 photos less than 20 minutes earlier. Birthday balloons. The little girl. A little boy missing his front tooth. Grant holding both children while everyone smiled into the camera. The caption was simple. "Happy birthday to the best dad our kids could ever ask for. We love you beyond words." Mallory's heartbeat became strangely calm. Almost peaceful. As if her body had decided panic was a luxury she could no longer afford. She enlarged the family photo. Grant wore the same navy blazer he had left home in that morning after kissing her goodbye. The same watch she had given him last Christmas. The same wedding ring still resting on his finger. She whispered into the empty room. "Who have I been married to?" Outside, the porch light switched on automatically as Grant's truck slowly pulled into the driveway. Grant walked through the front door carrying nothing but his laptop bag and the easy smile he had perfected over the years. "I am so sorry," he said, leaning in as though he expected their usual kiss. The client kept everyone longer than expected. Mallory stepped aside before he could touch her. It was subtle enough that he barely noticed. "Long day?" she asked. "You have no idea." He loosened his tie and glanced toward the dining room. "You decorated. It is our anniversary." His face tightened for a fraction of a second before the smile returned. "Tomorrow will be better. I promise." She looked at him carefully. Not because she believed him anymore, but because she wanted to remember exactly how effortlessly he lied. "Did you eat?" she asked. "Just a sandwich during the meeting." Another lie. She had watched him feed birthday cake to a little girl only 2 hours earlier. "I am exhausted," he continued. "Mind if I take a shower?" Of course. Grant disappeared upstairs, humming softly as though nothing in the world had changed. The moment the bathroom door closed, Mallory picked up his coffee mug from the kitchen counter. A faint streak of bright blue frosting clung near the handle. The same shade as the icing on the birthday cake she had seen through the bakery window. She rinsed the mug without a word. That night, Grant fell asleep within minutes. His breathing became slow, and even while Mallory stared at the ceiling beside him. Around midnight, she quietly slipped out of bed and walked downstairs with her tablet. She opened the birthday photos again. This time she did not look at Grant. She studied everything else. A school logo on one child's sweatshirt. A baseball trophy sitting on a shelf. Family vacation pictures framed behind the couch. None of it looked temporary. None of it looked like an affair hidden in hotel rooms. It looked lived in, built over years. She enlarged one photo until the image became grainy. A refrigerator covered with drawings and report cards. One drawing read, "Our family." Four stick figures stood beneath a bright yellow sun. Grant was one of them. Mallory closed her eyes. Suddenly, every missing weekend found its place. Every canceled holiday. Every unexpected business trip. Every phone call that ended with him saying, "I will explain later." There had always been an explanation, just never the truth. The next morning, she followed her normal routine. She brewed coffee. She answered emails from clients. She smiled politely when Grant kissed her cheek before leaving. "Love you," he said. "Drive safe," she replied. She waited exactly 15 minutes after his truck disappeared before opening the desk drawer where they kept tax records, insurance papers, and household files. She was not searching for proof anymore. She was searching for patterns. Old hotel receipts, airline confirmations, credit card statements. At first they looked ordinary. Then she noticed something. Every month, almost like clockwork, there was a charge from the same neighborhood across town. Grocery stores, a pharmacy, a family pizza place. None of those expenses had ever belonged to their life together. Mallory wrote down the address on a yellow legal pad. She folded the paper once and slipped it into her purse. She was no longer asking whether Grant had another family. She already knew the answer. The only question left was whether the woman living at that address knew she was sharing her life with someone else's husband. The address led Mallory to a quiet neighborhood 20 minutes from downtown, the kind with maple trees lining the sidewalks and bicycles resting in front yards. Nothing about it looked dramatic. It looked ordinary. That somehow hurt even more. She parked across the street and sat behind the wheel, pretending to check emails while watching the small brick house. Children's backpacks leaned against the front porch. A basketball rested beside the garage. Wind chimes swayed gently in the afternoon breeze. It looked like the home of a family that had spent years building memories together. At exactly 3:15, a yellow school bus stopped at the corner. The same little girl from the birthday party skipped toward the house, followed by the little boy carrying a science project. Before they reached the porch, the front door flew open. Rebecca Sloan stepped outside with a smile that reached her eyes. She hugged both children before helping the little boy keep his project from tipping over. Mallory watched quietly. There was no performance, no expensive gifts, no glamorous fantasy, just a mother greeting her children after school. A few minutes later, Rebecca climbed into a silver SUV and drove away alone. Mallory hesitated only a second before following at a safe distance. Rebecca stopped at an elementary school where she greeted teachers by name and carried a stack of reading folders inside. A teacher that explained the school calendar pinned on the refrigerator in the birthday photos. When the afternoon dismissal ended, Rebecca returned to the neighborhood grocery store. Mallory found herself standing only a few feet away in the produce section. Rebecca compared apples with the careful attention of someone stretching every dollar. She smiled politely when their shopping carts nearly touched. "Sorry about that," Rebecca said. "No problem," Mallory answered. Her voice sounded steadier than she expected. Rebecca glanced at the avocados in Mallory's cart. "Those are usually better if you need them today." Mallory gave a small smile. "Thank you." There was kindness in the woman's eyes. Nothing calculating, nothing smug, just simple kindness. That made everything harder. Before Mallory could lose her nerve, she spoke again. "Excuse me, are you Rebecca Sloan?" Rebecca looked surprised. "Yes. Have we met?" "No." Mallory swallowed carefully. "I think we need to talk. Somewhere private." Rebecca's expression shifted from confusion to caution. "Is this about school? About one of my students?" "No." Mallory glanced around to be sure no one was listening. "It is about Grant Holloway." Rebecca's face softened immediately into a warm smile. "Grant, did something happen? Is he all right?" Mallory felt the air leave her lungs. "You know him as Grant Holloway?" "Of course." Rebecca laughed quietly. "He is running late again, is he not? That man works too much." She shook her head affectionately. "We have been together almost 12 years. 12 years. Mallory did the math without meaning to. She and Grant had celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary just yesterday. 3 years. 3 years when both relationships had existed at the same time. Rebecca noticed the color drain from Mallory's face. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Mallory reached into her purse with trembling fingers and removed her wallet. She slid out a photograph she always carried. It showed her and Grant on a beach in Florida 5 summers earlier, both wearing matching anniversary shirts. She placed it silently in Rebecca's hands. Rebecca studied the picture. Her smile disappeared. She looked back at Mallory, then at the photograph again. Finally, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, she asked, "Who are you?" Mallory held her gaze and answered with heartbreaking calm, "I am Grant's wife." Rebecca did not speak for several seconds. The grocery store around them continued as though nothing had happened. Shopping carts rolled past. A toddler laughed near the checkout lanes. Someone apologized for blocking the cereal aisle. Ordinary life refused to stop, even as hers quietly came apart. She looked down at the beach photograph again, then back at Mallory. "That is not possible," she whispered. "Grant and I." Her voice faded. "We have 2 children together." Mallory nodded once. "I know." Rebecca gripped the edge of the shopping cart to steady herself. "No, there has to be some mistake. He told me his marriage ended years ago. He said his ex-wife moved away after they realized they wanted different things." Mallory gave a sad smile that never reached her eyes. "I have lived in the same house for 12 years. Rebecca's face turned pale. She reached for her phone with trembling hands and opened a family album filled with birthdays, Christmas mornings, beach vacations, and school concerts. Grant appeared in every chapter of their lives. She stared at the screen as though seeing it for the first time. "Every Thanksgiving," she murmured. "Every Christmas Eve when he said he had business conferences." Mallory quietly finished the sentence. "He was with me." Silence settled between them. It was not the silence of strangers. It was the silence of 2 women standing inside the same lie from opposite sides. Rebecca blinked back tears. "I thought I knew everything about him." "So did I." They left their shopping carts where they stood and walked to a small coffee shop across the parking lot. Neither of them ordered anything stronger than black coffee. Neither touched it. Rebecca pulled out an old envelope from her purse. Inside were photographs from a small backyard ceremony held 11 years earlier. Grant stood beside her beneath a flower arch with their children still babies in their arms. "He said we never needed paperwork because we were already a family," Rebecca said quietly. "He promised we would make it official after he expanded the business." Mallory listened without interrupting. Then she removed a copy of her own marriage certificate from the folder she had brought that morning. "Grant Holloway, Mallory Brooks, 15 years earlier. Signed. Recorded. Entirely legal." Rebecca stared at the document until tears slipped down her cheeks. "He married you," she whispered, "while he was promising forever to me." Mallory reached across the table and handed her a napkin. There was no anger left for the woman sitting across from her. Only sorrow. Rebecca wiped her eyes and asked the question both of them had been avoiding. "What are you going to do?" Mallory looked out the cafe window at families crossing the parking lot together. "I am not going to scream. I am not going to destroy his reputation with rumors." She paused. "I am going to learn exactly who I married before I make a single move." Rebecca nodded slowly. "If there is anything I can do." Mallory looked back at her. "Just tell me the truth. Every detail you remember. Dates, trips, addresses, anything." Rebecca took a deep breath. "Then there is something you should know." She reached into her purse again and pulled out a folded brochure from Grant's briefcase that she had found the previous weekend. Across the front was the logo of a luxury waterfront condominium development. A handwritten note in Grant's unmistakable handwriting read, "Closing next Friday. Surprise for V." Rebecca frowned. "I thought the surprise was for me." Mallory read the note twice. She had never heard of any property purchase, and she had no idea who V was. Mallory slipped the brochure back into its envelope before anyone in the coffee shop noticed the silence between them. "Do you know anyone whose name starts with the letter V?" she asked. Rebecca slowly shook her head. "No. I thought maybe it meant vacation or some business project." Mallory stared at the neat handwriting one more time. She had lived with Grant long enough to recognize when he was making plans weeks in advance. Whatever was scheduled for next Friday mattered. She folded the brochure and placed it inside her purse. "Do not mention this conversation to him," she said calmly. Rebecca nodded without hesitation. "I will not." They exchanged phone numbers, and before they walked out of the coffee shop, Rebecca stopped. "Mallory." "Yes." "I owe you an apology." Mallory looked confused. Rebecca lowered her eyes. "I thought I was talking to the woman who had ruined his first marriage. I believed every story he told me. I am sorry." Mallory felt a lump rise in her throat. "You were lied to just like I was." They walked toward their cars in opposite directions. carrying different lives but the same heartbreak. Over the next several days, Mallory changed nothing on the surface. She still left for work at the same time every morning. She still answered Grant's calls. She still listened as he talked about meetings, investors, and shipping contracts over dinner. The only difference was that she finally heard the empty spaces between his words. Every excuse now sounded rehearsed. Every apology arrived too quickly. Every promise felt borrowed from an old script. Instead of confronting him, she quietly began organizing copies of financial records, mortgage documents, retirement accounts, and insurance policies. One afternoon, she scheduled a confidential consultation with a family law attorney recommended by a longtime client. She did not ask how to punish her husband. She asked how to protect herself legally before making any decisions. The attorney appreciated the question. Do not move money. Do not hide assets. Just make copies of everything you are legally entitled to access, the attorney advised. Knowledge is protection. Mallory thanked her and left with a folder full of notes instead of anger. That evening, Grant arrived home carrying flowers. I know I have been distracted lately, he said with an easy smile. How about we spend next weekend at the lake? Just the two of us. Mallory accepted the flowers without reacting. That sounds nice. Grant looked relieved, as though another performance had succeeded. After dinner, he disappeared into his home office to take what he called an important conference call. Mallory remained in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher, when his phone buzzed on the counter. He had forgotten it. She did not reach for it immediately. Then the screen lit up again. A message preview appeared before the display locked. Vanessa, everything is ready. She cannot find out before the closing. Vanessa, the letter V. Mallory remembered the note inside the condominium brochure. Her pulse quickened, but her hands stayed steady. She picked up the phone just as the screen went dark. She could not unlock it, but she did not need to. She already knew one thing for certain. Grant was not acting alone. Someone had been helping him keep his double life hidden. A few minutes later, Grant walked back into the kitchen, smiling as though nothing in the world was wrong. Have you seen my phone? He asked casually. Mallory handed it to him. It was right here. He glanced at the screen for only a second before sliding it into his pocket. Thanks. As he walked away, Mallory noticed something she had never questioned before. Every time Grant lied, he touched his wedding ring without realizing it. For 15 years, she had thought it was a habit. Now she wondered if it had always been a tell. Then her own phone vibrated. It was a text from Rebecca containing a single photograph. Grant was standing outside the same waterfront condominium building, smiling beside a well-dressed woman Mallory had never seen before. The caption beneath the picture simply read, I think this is Vanessa. But why is she signing papers with Grant? Mallory did not answer Rebecca's message right away. Instead, she enlarged the photograph until the image became grainy. Grant stood beside a woman in a navy business suit, both holding folders embossed with the logo of the waterfront development. The woman was not wearing a wedding dress or celebrating a personal milestone. She looked like someone conducting business. Mallory recognized her almost immediately. Vanessa Holloway, Grant's older sister. They had shared Thanksgiving dinners for years. Vanessa had always presented herself as the protective older sibling, quick with advice and quicker with opinions. She had often joked that Grant would never survive without her. Looking back, those comments no longer sounded harmless. The next morning, Mallory met with her attorney for a second consultation. She slid the photograph across the desk. I think my sister-in-law knows more than she has ever admitted, she said. The attorney studied the picture for a moment before setting it aside. Whether she knows or not, stay focused on facts, not assumptions. Continue gathering documents. Let evidence tell the story. Mallory appreciated the reminder. Emotion could cloud judgment. Documents could not. That afternoon, Rebecca called during her lunch break. Her voice sounded tired but steady. I found something else, she said. Grant left an old file cabinet unlocked in the garage. What did you find? Mallory asked. Tax records, loan papers, business correspondence. Rebecca hesitated. There are payments every month to an account I have never heard of. Mallory listened carefully. Do not take the originals. Just make copies if you legally have access to them. I already did, Rebecca answered. I will bring them to you after work. They met at a quiet public library where neither would attract attention. Rebecca spread the copied documents across a study table. Most of them involved routine business expenses, but one recurring payment stood out. Every month, Grant transferred money into a limited liability company called Harbor Crest Holdings. Mallory frowned. That is not one of his companies. Rebecca pointed to another page. Look at the registered manager. Mallory read the name twice. Vanessa Holloway. Suddenly, the condominium brochure made sense. The property was never meant to surprise Rebecca. It was not even meant for Grant. It appeared to be purchased through a company controlled by Vanessa. Mallory remained silent until she noticed another detail buried in the paperwork. The mailing address for Harbor Crest Holdings matched the office building where Grant's logistics company leased executive space. Whatever they were doing, they had been working together for years. Later that evening, Grant returned home carrying takeout from Mallory's favorite Italian restaurant. Thought you deserved a night off from cooking, he said with an easy smile. During dinner, he talked about a possible company expansion and an upcoming board meeting. Mallory listened without interrupting. For the first time, she noticed how carefully he avoided specific details whenever business came up. Every answer sounded complete while revealing almost nothing. Before going upstairs, Grant casually mentioned, Vanessa wants us to come over Sunday. She says it has been too long since we had dinner together. Mallory looked at him for a second longer than usual. I would love that, she replied. Grant smiled, relieved by her answer. He had no idea she was already planning to accept the invitation for a completely different reason. If Vanessa had helped build the walls around his double life, then Sunday dinner was no longer a family visit. It was the first time Mallory would sit across the table from the woman who might hold the final pieces of the truth. Sunday afternoon arrived with bright skies and the kind of warm breeze that made every house on Vanessa Holloway Street look like a picture from a real estate magazine. Grant parked in the driveway and smiled at Mallory as he turned off the engine. She has been looking forward to seeing you, he said. Mallory returned a polite smile. I have been looking forward to seeing her too. Vanessa opened the front door before they even reached the porch. There you are, she said, hugging Grant first before giving Mallory a quick embrace that felt more like obligation than affection. Dinner is almost ready. Inside, everything looked exactly as Mallory remembered from past holidays. Family photographs lined the hallway. Fresh flowers decorated the dining table. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers. If Mallory had not known the truth, she would have believed she was walking into the home of someone she could trust. Throughout dinner, Vanessa controlled every conversation. She asked Grant about business. She complimented his latest expansion. She barely acknowledged Mallory's work except to ask, "Still decorating offices?" Mallory smiled. Mostly commercial renovations now. It keeps me busy. Vanessa nodded with little interest before changing the subject. It was subtle, but Mallory noticed the pattern. Every time money, business, or property came up, Vanessa answered for Grant before he could speak. After dessert, Grant stepped outside to take a phone call. Vanessa began clearing plates from the table. Let me help, Mallory offered. Of course. They stood side by side in the kitchen, rinsing dishes under warm water. For several minutes, neither woman said much. Then Mallory glanced casually toward a stack of unopened mail on the counter. One envelope displayed the familiar Harbor Crest Holdings logo she had seen in the copied documents. Vanessa noticed her eyes lingering there and calmly turned the envelope face down. Just boring paperwork, she said with a light laugh. Business never sleeps. Mallory dried another plate. Grant mentioned you have been helping with some investments. Vanessa smiled proudly. Someone has to keep my little brother from making expensive mistakes. You must trust each other a great deal. Vanessa looked directly at her. Family always protects family. The sentence sounded ordinary enough, but something about the way she said it carried a deeper meaning. Before Mallory could respond, Grant walked back inside. Everything okay? He asked. Everything is perfect, Vanessa answered quickly. Later, while Grant loaded leftovers into the car, Mallory excused herself to use the downstairs restroom. On the way back through the hallway, she noticed the door to Vanessa's home office sitting slightly open. She was not searching for trouble, but one framed document on the desk caught her attention. It was a certificate of organization for Harbor Crest Holdings. Vanessa's name appeared as the managing member, exactly as the records had shown. Beside it sat another folder, left carelessly half open. Across the top page, in large printed letters, were the words estate planning. Before Mallory could read anything else, footsteps echoed behind her. Vanessa stood in the doorway with a calm expression that never reached her eyes. Looking for the bathroom? She asked. I already found it, Mallory replied evenly. Vanessa stepped closer, folded the folder shut, and smiled. Good. Some papers are easy to misunderstand when they are taken out of context. The ride home was almost silent. Grant hummed along with the radio, unaware that Mallory was replaying every word Vanessa had spoken. Family always protects family. It sounded less like a belief now and more like a warning. Just before they reached home, Mallory's phone vibrated. It was a message from Rebecca with a scanned copy of one more document she had uncovered. The first line made Mallory's heart stop. It was a life insurance policy naming someone other than his legal wife as the primary beneficiary. Mallory read the insurance document 3 times before she allowed herself to believe what she was seeing. The policy was legitimate. Grant was the insured. Rebecca Sloan was listed as the primary beneficiary. There was nothing illegal about naming anyone as a beneficiary, but after everything she had learned, the document revealed something much deeper. Grant had built 2 separate futures, and each woman had been led to believe she was the only one standing beside him. Mallory immediately called her attorney the next morning. She slid the insurance policy across the desk. "Does this change anything?" she asked. The attorney read it carefully before looking up. "Not necessarily. People can name almost anyone as a beneficiary. But combined with everything else you have documented, it helps establish a pattern of deception in your personal relationship. Keep focusing on facts, not emotion." Mallory nodded. That advice had become her anchor. Facts, not assumptions. Facts. Later that afternoon, she met Rebecca in the same quiet library where they had exchanged documents before. Rebecca looked exhausted. "I barely slept," she admitted. "I kept asking myself how many birthdays, holidays, and school plays he attended after leaving your house." Mallory sighed softly. "I stopped counting anniversaries for the same reason." Rebecca reached into her bag one last time. "There is something else." She placed several printed emails on the table. "I found these in an old account he asked me to organize years ago. I never paid attention to them until now." Mallory carefully read through the messages. Most involved Harbor Crest Holdings, property financing, and conversations between Grant and Vanessa. Then one sentence caught her attention. "Once the transfer is complete, everything will finally be protected from any divorce claim." Mallory slowly lowered the page. She understood enough from her attorney to know that no single email proved wrongdoing, and asset ownership depended on many legal facts. Still, the message explained why Grant and Vanessa had worked so closely. They had been planning around the possibility that his marriage could one day fall apart. Rebecca looked at Mallory with disbelief. "Do you think he expected this?" Mallory folded the papers neatly. "I think he expected to control every outcome." That evening, instead of confronting Grant, Mallory made one final appointment with her attorney. Together, they reviewed years of financial records, property documents, retirement accounts, and business disclosures. The attorney organized everything into a clear timeline. "You have enough information to move forward when you are ready," she said. "The most important thing now is to stay calm until the paperwork is prepared." Mallory left the office feeling something she had not felt in weeks. It was not happiness. It was clarity. When she arrived home, Grant was setting the dining table with takeout containers from her favorite restaurant. "I thought we could have a quiet night," he said with an easy smile. "Just us." Mallory looked around the familiar kitchen that had once represented safety. Every photograph on the wall suddenly belonged to another version of her life. She smiled politely. "That sounds nice." During dinner, Grant talked about a board meeting scheduled for Friday morning. He mentioned that Vanessa would be there because of a property investment they were finalizing. He spoke confidently, never realizing every sentence filled another empty space in the timeline Mallory had already built. After he went upstairs, Mallory remained alone at the table. She opened the folder from her attorney one final time. On top rested a completed set of divorce papers, ready to be filed. Beneath them lay copies of every document she had gathered over the past several weeks. She quietly placed the folder back into her briefcase, switched off the kitchen light, and looked toward the staircase where Grant had disappeared. Friday was no longer just another business day on his calendar. Without realizing it, he had scheduled the morning he would lose control of every story he had spent years trying to keep alive. Friday morning began the same way every other Friday had for years. Grant buttoned his navy suit jacket, poured himself a cup of coffee, and kissed Mallory lightly on the cheek. "Wish me luck," he said with an easy grin. Big meeting today. Mallory smiled back. I hope everything goes exactly the way it is supposed to. He laughed without understanding what she meant. 10 minutes after his truck disappeared down the street, Mallory picked up her briefcase, locked the front door for the last time, and drove to the courthouse with her attorney. The paperwork had already been reviewed. Every signature was in place. Every financial disclosure had been prepared according to the law. There were no dramatic speeches, no shouting, just a quiet stack of documents that officially ended 15 years of marriage. By noon, Grant was served with the divorce petition outside his office building as he walked toward lunch with Vanessa. According to his attorney later that afternoon, he stood frozen on the sidewalk reading the first page while Vanessa repeatedly asked, "What is this?" For the first time in years, neither of them had an answer. Mallory did not call him. She did not send a message. She simply followed the advice she had been given from the beginning and allowed the legal process to do its work. Less than an hour later, her phone lit up again and again. Grant called 6 times. Then came a text. "Please let me explain." She read it once before placing the phone face down on her desk. There had been thousands of chances to explain. He had chosen silence every single time. Later that evening, Rebecca called. "He came to my house," she said quietly. He admitted he lied. He said he never meant for either of us to get hurt. Mallory closed her eyes for a moment. Intent does not erase years of choices. Rebecca let out a slow breath. I packed his things. Neither woman celebrated. There was nothing joyful about watching someone else's world collapse, especially when they had once loved the person standing in the middle of it. Several months passed. Mallory reopened her interior design studio under her own name instead of the business Grant had encouraged her to keep small. New clients arrived through referrals. Her confidence returned one project at a time. Rebecca accepted a position leading a literacy program at another elementary school. The two women met for coffee every few weeks, not to discuss Grant anymore, but to talk about work, family, and the ordinary moments that had finally become peaceful again. One crisp autumn afternoon, Mallory locked the front door of her studio after finishing a downtown renovation. Across the street, parents laughed while children chased bright leaves across the sidewalk. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was Grant. There was no request to come back. No excuses. Only one sentence. I finally understand that the greatest thing I ever lost was the truth. Mallory looked at the screen for a long moment before quietly deleting the message. She slipped the phone into her purse, lifted her face toward the cool afternoon sun, and continued walking without looking back. Sometimes the strongest revenge is not watching someone else fall. It is refusing to let their choices define the rest of your life. The greatest victory is waking up one morning and realizing your peace no longer depends on the apology that may never come. And when you finally choose yourself, you do not just leave the past behind. You give your future a chance to become something honest.